Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Emmy the Cat Lady, and you join me here in Sanctuary Hills because we are talking about the next part of Emmy's Wasteland Survival Guide. So we're moving up a step in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we are on the second tier of that, which is all about safety and security. So this is the next kind of most important considerations once the basic physiological needs are taken care of. So what exactly does that mean? So safety means being protected from danger, being protected from risks and injury. The security is more about kind of defining the system that provides that protection. It's an essential consideration, and historically, for people, it hasn't been necessarily that well taken care of. Excuse the Brahmin getting stuck. They can just teleport themselves eventually. But one of the kind of things is, especially in places of employment, health and safety and regulations about that haven't historically been that great. If you watched my video about radiation in the Science of Fallout series, which I'll link for you. Sorry, I got distracted. This Nick just chatting to random people. So what I mentioned in the radiation video in the Science of Fallout series was the radium girls. So for those that don't know, the radium girls were women who worked in factories in the US, and they painted glow-in-the-dark paint onto watch and clock faces. So the paint contained radium, which is a radioactive element, and that's what made it glow. And it breaks down into radon. And the women were told it was perfectly safe, and they were encouraged to put the paintbrushes in their mouths to get a fine point on the brush using their lips, which was all well and good until they began developing dental disease, anemia and infertility, and then one woman's jaw fell off. Literally, it fell off, and she died shortly after that, and this happened in 1923, so barely 100 years ago. And eventually litigation followed after a few more deaths and some major health problems with these women, and this litigation eventually resulted in better protections for workers and health and safety regulations around hazardous substances, radiation and things like that. So what kind of things do we need protection from in the Fallout universe? So obviously the specific dangers vary by circumstances, and Fallout's post-apocalyptic world is absolutely full of them. There's so many dangers out there, so to survive this cruel and inhospitable wasteland, you need to be prepared. So wildlife includes some nasty, dangerous insects like these guys, the Casdors here. Look at the size of that one. Death claws, giant scorpions, giant mole rats, bears, geckos, night stalkers. The list just goes on and on. And if you've been following my Science of Fallout series, you'll be aware that the biggest change to the creatures in the Fallout universe is that they've massively increased in size, and they are much more aggressive than they used to be. Another danger that we have to be aware of is people. Not everyone that you meet is going to be a friendly sort, and you can run into all kinds of raiders and criminal elements. There's many flavours of them, including the Chemus and raiders and fiends, to the better organised gunners, Talon Company and the Cans. You've got cannibals and vampires hiding in plain sight in a number of places, and slavers too, like the Legion, the Raiders of Nuka World, and all the guys at Paradise Falls in Fallout 3, and they've spread far across the wasteland, and they attack people and kidnap them and sell them as slaves. That's something that is well known to happen with a bunch of these groups, and the Legion are one of them. You've got the Enclave, who are generally considered the bad guys. They're the main antagonist in Fallout 2 and in Fallout 3. They are aggressive towards outsiders and their opponents. They believe in cleansing the wasteland of any mutants at all, which probably includes basically everybody that lives on the surface because of the amount of radiation present, that kind of a thing. The Brotherhood of Steel as well are debatable about whether they're the good guys or not. They believe they're the good guys, but they do come charging in with their airships and their power armour, and start staking out territory, whether they're welcome or not, demanding support from local farmers, collecting technology because they believe the average Wastelander is unworthy of it and they can't be trusted with technology. And if you really piss them off, then they will deploy their giant anti-communist nuke chucking robot against you. So, you know, it's there's a lot of potential dangers out there in human form and some in what we would describe as humanoid. So we've got some humanoid dangers as well, such as the feral ghouls here that are mindless zombies essentially that attack with impunity. They're not clever, but they're numerous and they move fast, and some of them might even be your old neighbours. Is that a glowing one? Yeah, I've got a glowing one. So you've got the ghouls, the feral ghoul version, and they can be pretty dangerous. They are fast moving and hard to kill. Oh, ash pile. You also have super mutants. They need to be mentioned because they are everywhere. Oh, there's a nightkin there. They're big, they're aggressive, and they're stubborn, and they want to find FUV and take people to dunk into the FUV in order to make more super mutants. The West Coast variety here are generally a bit smarter and less inclined to be aggressive by default, particularly if you venture up to, for example, Jacobstown and you meet Marcus, and there's another nightkin up there. But on the other coast, your Vault 87 mutants have no intelligent leadership at all, and they just attack settlements and most of the DC ruins with impunity. The Commonwealth mutants are very similar, and they're being pumped out by the Institute for no obvious reason, just because they could, which is a bit strange, and that's something that I'll cover in detail in another video. But certainly the super mutants are one of the biggest threats to a lot of settlements across the Commonwealth. And another problematic risk that comes from the Institute is the synths. So we have these synthetic sort of Gen 1, Gen 2 that are obvious that they're synths, and they are problematic enough, but they also can deploy the Gen 3s that look like people and could be any one of your settlers or even a Brahmin. There's synth Brahmin that can appear in your settlement, and there's not really an easy way to tell unless you kill them, although sometimes your settlers can exhibit some odd behaviour and that can give you a bit of a clue. But you know, we've got synths, we've got other robots traipsing around the wasteland, some of them quite aggressive, and definitely problematic in that sense. So, quite a long list of potential threats out there in the wasteland. Oh, Jesus, Brahmin are getting stuck on the turrets and things. I should probably fix this at some point. Anyway, so next up we need to talk about what we can do to ensure our security. Okay, so you've got quite a few options for ensuring security, and one of the first ones that you can think about is the questionable strategy, but you know, we can build a wall, and then we can build gates, and you could do this and build a wall with a controlled gate all around your settlements and keep people out. I know what it sounds like, but we're discussing actual, real and universe dangers here, and having a barrier with a lockable gate or door can definitely help. Most of the creatures that you encounter can't open doors, so solid walls and a fence can at least slow them down and give you some time to prepare another defence. But just to be clear, this isn't any kind of endorsement of anything in the real world, just to be clear on that. And we see this all across the games, all across the wasteland. Megaton has a big wall with a gate in front of it. Tenpenny Tower has a wall around it, again with a guarded gate. Covenant, Diamond City, New Vegas itself, Freeside, Camp McCarran, all these places around the Wasteland and the different games can demonstrate that this is something that is worth considering. It's one thing that did kind of bother me about how the settlement attacks are set up here in Fallout 4. Because the spawn points for the attackers are within the settlement boundaries, it means that even if you do build a wall right round the edge of the buildable area, they basically just teleport inside anyway and attack, which is a bit of a strange thing. They could have probably had the spawn points being further away, and then they have to get to the settlement, and that would give you the option of potentially funneling them into a line of turrets or something like that, and you could get a bit more creative with setting up your defences. But another thing that's particularly helpful is having armed guards, so you can build them in Fallout 4. As we've got here, we've got this guy who is a guard and is working these guard posts and supported by a bunch of turrets as well. So that kind of indicates the sort of automatic choices that you can set up as well. You can set up turrets, you can set up spotlights, and you can set traps and all that kind of thing. You also have the option, if we head down the road here, so you've got automated systems, which would be like your turrets and things, and then you've got autonomous security, which is sort of more free thinking and independent options. My particular favourite, unsurprisingly, if we get here to Red Rocket, this is where I keep most of my doggos. So you can deploy guard dogs, trained Deathclaws, Yalguai, and you can see the dog provides 5 defence. I'm pretty sure I had a wolf in here as well, Mishka, I don't know where she's gone. She adds 8 defence, so you know, if you've got animals that you can train, and there's Dogmeat the good boy. Robots would be an option as well. All these kinds of things could be helpful for keeping you safe. If you've got your sentry bots, your protectrons, assaultrons, the gunners are quite fond of using assaultrons for defence. Both the Brotherhood and the Enclave use sentry bots and turrets as well. So one of the options that I quite like, and particularly this version of it, is, well, here's Craig Boone here, looking grumpy as always. We're in the mouth of Dinky the Dinosaur, so having a sniper nest high up in your settlement is really, really good, because, I mean, look at that view. So anything that's coming up, so that's Helios 1 over there, then the road, anything that comes up that road, anything that comes up that road, you're going to see it. So having a trained sniper like Boone here and his friend Manny Vargas, they take alternating shifts to keep watch. So Boone's the night shift guy and Manny's the day shift guy, and they keep watch from here, and they can shoot down anything that approaches that appears to be a threat. So that is definitely a good option. And then another one that we can't really talk about security without mentioning is, of course, the Securitrons. So Mr. House's robot of choice for keeping the strip safe. They have the ability to make decisions based on if you've got enough caps to be allowed into the strip or not. And once they've been upgraded, they are incredibly effective, and they're ideal for protecting House's interests in Vegas. So, of course, these options are great if you're at a settlement or a stronghold where you're staying in one place. But if you're travelling, so trade caravans, that kind of thing, and you'll notice that the traders in New Vegas tend to have a handful of mercenaries with them, or caravan guards travelling alongside them. Same in Fallout 4, and you can arm your own provisioners as well. If you were to camp, then setting up a watch rota would be helpful, because obviously if you're sleeping, then you're vulnerable to a bold predator or a sneaky enemy, and setting up automatic security is not really feasible when you're camping just temporarily. But having a dog with your robot would be a reasonable thing to do. And there is safety in numbers, but as you can see here, sometimes the trade caravans do end up getting attacked. This one is Durable Dunn's sacked caravan, so one of the caravan guards here that is dead, as well as some of the Van Graaf thugs, so we know it was the Van Graafs that attacked this trade caravan. So definitely something to think about for your survivability in the Wasteland, is that there is safety in numbers. Having companions, having, guard dogs, that kind of thing, probably quite sensible. Of course, not all the dangers are obvious and tangible like the raiders and the death claws. There are less tangible risks that have to be considered, and realistically you need to take them into account wherever possible. So disease and sickness is a real issue, especially since most Wastelanders have a weakened immune system because of the background radiation and that kind of a thing. So one thing that is really important is infectious and communicable diseases, that kind of thing. Infectious diseases could be very serious, so if you have a secure settlement, you maybe want to consider some kind of quarantine procedure, or at least checking for symptoms of potentially serious diseases. Something worth considering. There's a new plague that goes around, and that was kind of the reason that the FEV virus was developed in the first place, and it is still showing up. If you dig into Macready's companion quest in Fallout 4, you learn that his son actually has it, and that's why he's here, is to try and find a cure. You need to think about dealing with the dead. So if someone in your community dies, you have to think about what to do with them. If you can't just kind of leave them to rot, and dealing with waste as well. So having some kind of way of getting rid of waste, some kind of latrine system, something like that. Quite important, because if you don't, then that's when you get problems. Worth noting that Europe in the 14th century had a bit of a problem with this, where if you look at several streets in Paris are literally named after the French word merde, which means shit. So literally named because there was so much excrement running down the streets. So part of this is the reason why the Black Death, Black Plague, Bubonic Plague, it's got 40 million names, Yersinia pestis being the scientific name of it, to spread so quickly. And this was long before germ theory was put forward, and centuries before Pasteur, Koch and Lister made their groundbreaking discoveries linking bacteria to disease. So bring out your dead, do something with them, whether it's burial or cremation, and have some kind of latrine system to keep human waste far away from food and water resources. And synth infiltration is a known risk in Fallout 4. We can't be sure of their intentions, but given the Institute sends them out, it's probably not actually for the betterment of mankind. Synth settlers can damage generators' defences to prelude to a synth attack on the settlement. You can notice sometimes odd behaviour, like them not going to sleep and randomly pulling guns, but you can't be sure that a synth is present until you kill them and find a synth component. As we mentioned a few times, Covenant here have their rip-off of the goat test. And if you do the quest line here, you can learn that the test was correct about 50% of the time, which is random chance, is about as effective as tossing a coin or throwing a dart while blindfolded to decide whether somebody's a synth or not. And then you kill them and find out that you were wrong. It's pure random chance, and there's not really a way to know without actually killing the person that is readily available. But clearly having synths infiltrating your settlements is a bit of a problem, and especially if you've not got to the Institute, or if you're enemies with them, because then they're going to send the Giant 1s and 2s to attack your settlement. And that's something that the people here in Covenant are extremely paranoid about. And then obviously the big one, radiation and the fallout of the bombs. The clue's in the name after all. Radiation's a constant threat in the Wasteland, and it's a silent killer if you don't have a pit boy or some form of Geiger counter available to let you know when you're in the midst of the radiation. So you need to protect yourself against that when you can. So that includes things like having a hazmat suit, this fabulous outfit, having Radex and Radaway available. A good example for that is if you look at Starlight Drive-In and Fallout 4, which has a big puddle in the middle that would be a great water source if it wasn't full of radioactive barrels, and the rads are really high, which you can't see when you're in build mode as well, so you need to be careful. It's hard to get close enough to scrap the barrels without taking some rads while you're doing that. And one of the biggest ones really is mental health problems, and this is something that we know from the real world. The more difficult life is, the more people have to struggle to get by and live in survival mode, the higher the chances of mental health issues developing and dealing with all the danger and all the nonsense in the wasteland. It's going to take its toll on people's mental health eventually. It's one thing I think is worth noting about Kid in a Fridge in this game, which, other than being utter nonsense in general, is a very bizarre choice. That quest is that I just don't see how that kid could be stuck inside a fridge for 210 years and emerge with his sanity intact, because there's no chance that that would actually be able to happen if you were trapped there for that length of time and somehow able to survive, that your mental health would remain intact. It just it doesn't make any sense. But for the sake of mental health, having your basic physiological needs met, like food, water, shelter, and feeling safe and secure, that helps a lot. If you feel safe, then you're going to be more productive, your physical health's going to be better, and your mental health's going to be better. So having the ability to, feel safe, like here in Covenant, they've got quite a good setup here actually. They've got the big wall with the doors, there's a guy on the doors, you've got turrets everywhere, barbed wire so people can't climb the wall easily. You've got these nice little houses that are still fairly solid, you've got food, you've got water, you've got a cat, everything that you could possibly need, really. So it is very important for the long-term survivability of people in this post-apocalyptic world, and having the security system goes a long way to improving that. So that's kind of a rundown of the kind of safety and security. So there's lots of dangers to consider. People often focus on the creatures, the dangerous creatures and the people that are going to attack, but there are other dangers as well, and there's other risks that you'd need to be aware of in order to get by in this world. So keep your Geiger counter handy, keep your gun handy, build some turrets, and stay safe. So that's also true, Nick, thanks. Stay safe guys in the Wasteland, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.